Hello, everybody. Welcome to the group stage of Victory Road's World Cup of VGC. My name is Stefan Mott. With me is Hayden McTavish, and we are here to bring you the first broadcast of the second round of groups, the official group stage of the World Cup. I'm excited, Hayden. How are you feeling today?
I'm absolutely excited as well. I think we've got so many accomplished teams coming in and all these teams that have just qualified and shown their mettle. Really excited to see some face-offs between the two.
Indeed. And of course, this event is sponsored by Elgato, GG Tour, and Metafy. Big shout outs to the partners for all of the support. I'm really looking forward to how this tournament, how this next round of the tournament goes. We have the top 8 teams from last year joining the those teams who qualified out of the qualifier stage, and we've got some pretty interesting matches. But before that, let's go over the structure of this event one more time. Of course, we had those qualifier groups, which are now concluded. Half of those teams, the top 2 in each group of 4, advanced on to the group stage, where we are in 8 groups of 4, so 32 total teams are remaining in this tournament. Once again, the best 2 teams per group will advance to the top 16 playoffs, which will then be a single elimination bracket where the matches will switch from an 8v8 format to a 7v7 format. And of course, then the teams will be playing off $5,000 in prizes for the top 8.
So many teams trying to just get that opportunity to start to be able to play for the money, to show that their teams are really strong. And we have those old competitors of the accomplished teams jumping into the fray this time.
Indeed, we do. Now, taking a look at today's matches, we have three representatives from top 8 teams sort of making their team's debut on the stream today. First up, we have Hakim Na for Singapore, facing off against Renny Payumo from Philippines. So we have a top 8 team from last season against Renny Payumo, representing a team that is in the group stage for the first time. The Philippines had the indignity of going out in the qualifier stage off the back of a best-of-3 playoff match because they were tied across every single tiebreaker last season with Switzerland. So they are here to actually play in the group stage this time. I'm sure they feel like they deserved it, getting so close last time around. And it's great to see them here. The Philippines team doing really, really well in that qualifying stage, and they have a really interesting sort of lineup and roster of players. It's been really, really fun to watch some of their matches so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited that we'll get to showcase that one first. And what a wonderful story of getting as close as you possibly could to qualifying and now finally making it this time around.
Indeed. So, match number 2, Sebastian Parra versus Matt Tidd for Chile versus Canada. This one is the lone match that doesn't have a top 8 team from last time, but regardless, Canada and Chile both really, really strong teams. It's going to be crazy to see 2 of the strongest players from both of those teams facing off against each other. Before we have China's debut with Chongjun Peng against Arekusabi from Puerto Rico. It's awesome to see Puerto Rico advancing as well. You love seeing the small countries do well. A little bit biased there, but you do love to see the small countries do well.
Absolutely. Very excited to see Puerto Rico show their stuff here.
And then the last match is me. I will not be casting that one, surprisingly.
maybe I'll talk about that match so that Stefan doesn't have to talk about himself too much. We've got Stefan Matt versus Juan Salerno. Going to be hopefully a very close match. Very excited to see how that one plays out. Definitely Switzerland versus Argentina. Hopefully going to be a very fun match to see. I think they've played last year as well. In under very high stakes, and it's going to be exciting to see how this turns out this time around as well.
It should be a fun one. I hope. We'll see how it goes. But if you would like to join the VGC Victory Road community, there's a lot of ways to do that. Of course, you're here on Twitch right now, so hello. Hit the follow button if you haven't followed already. But make sure that you follow the Twitter account as well at VGC Victory Road. Check out the YouTube channel. There are matches that are put onto the YouTube channel that are not broadcast live, so it is definitely worth checking out the YouTube as well. And then, of course, finally, there is that Discord link. But arguably most importantly of all after the stream is that website there at the bottom of your screen, www.worldcupvgc.com. The World Cup website is so great. There's so much information. It's just a wonderful way to keep up with every little detail of what is going on this year.
Absolutely. So make sure to follow us on all of those. And I think we're about ready to transition into the specific first match of the day. Looking like it's going to be a very exciting one.
Yeah, let's have a look at the overall match, the 8v8 that we've got going on here. Philippines is leading 1-0 at this point, which is a pretty great result for them. You know, you want to have that first little win to motivate the team a little bit more. And Francis Tai taking the win against Melvin K. Now, Melvin, an incredibly strong player, one of the absolute big hitters for Singapore. So that's already a gigantic win for the Philippines, and they've got to be feeling good going into this second match.
Yeah, having that momentum of being able to take down a player who you might have expected to do just like really, really well in this matchup is such a big like mental boost for that team. And it's going to be really exciting to see if the Philippines can capitalize on that momentum, or if Singapore is going to be able to turn it right back around and say, sure, you can take out one of our very good players. We've still got 7 more brilliant players ready to battle.
Let's have a look at the player accomplishments going a little bit more. We're going to zoom in a little bit on this specific match right before we head on into it. But in the meantime, hi, we're back on our screen. Hello. And here we go. So Philippines versus Singapore. We, of course, have Renny Payumo as a 2021 World Cup competitor, and the 2016 actually got top 8 at the Singapore Nationals. So, you know, maybe did a little bit of scouting 6 years ago when he went on over to have a look at the Singaporean players. But Hakim on the other side, also a representative of Singapore last year in the World Cup, which is, of course, a pretty big achievement given that Singapore pulled out that top 8. And then also won a Rose Tower Clash in 2020. So we're looking at these two players as two guys who don't have a ton of accomplishments, but they have shown multiple times in the past that they are capable of playing at a very, very high level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you can get like a top 8 at a national championship, that's pretty impressive. And then we've also got this awesome storyline sneaking in that like once we're grabbing all of these teams that did really well last year, a lot of the players who were competing the previous year were just instrumental in that. And so there's definitely this piece. I think Hakim was a huge part of Singapore being able to make it to the top 8 last time. And so just like the fact that someone was a World Cup competitor the previous year is such a strong accomplishment often for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, Hakim pulling off a 5-2 record in World Cup 2021. So a very important part of Singapore's success in the 2021 World Cup. We will see if the journey can begin today to see if Hakim can, you know, pull it off again. Really cool teams that we're seeing. We're seeing teams that have been used in the past, but one thing that is very, very notable to me is, of course, that Moltres on the Swordfish Shedinja team on Hakim's side. This looks to be a very similar build to the Milan special event winning team that Pato used. And Renny on the other side using what looks to be an older but still pretty standard like Zashi and Yveltal core. Like that's kind of the team you expect when you hear Zashi and Yveltal. But the archetype's kind of fallen off recently, so it's really interesting to see it coming back in this set.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting fact that when you're playing just specifically for one person, rather than like the whole host of everything you'd have to face, suddenly like when a team was last popular or wasn't is like a totally different perspective. Like maybe people haven't gotten as much practice against these 6 Pokemon since way back when we were seeing it at sort of US regionals piloted by players like Z Castagliosa. And I'm very excited to see sort of like maybe you can just use an old team and it's hard to prep for. Maybe there's some really interesting text for this. Definitely curious. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the Moltres facing down the Yveltal is very interesting. Sort of Hakim getting that same Dark Flying type, and it will still benefit from Dark Aura if Yveltal's on the field, but it doesn't cost a restricted spot. And you get that Kyogre, but on the other hand, that Yveltal, a whole lot stronger in terms of just raw stats than the Moltres. And so I'm interested to see sort of how that trade-off works out.
It's going to be interesting. We see the shiny Moltres coming out. Those are such good shinies. The whole set of the birds, so good. But we do see the shiny Moltres leading off for Hakim, and we have the Zashians facing down against one another as well. Looking like an interesting lead here for... looks like the Regieleki is going to give quite a lot of momentum here to that side of the field. So it's going to be interesting to see just how this turn 1 goes.
Yeah, I think you've identified the big threat right away. This Regieleki has so much it can do in terms of speed control, in terms of doing a ton of damage to the Moltres. I suppose there's maybe a question that, like, if that Moltres has a weakness policy with its high special defense, is there maybe something that can work out to be threatening in return? But there's just so much damage from the Zacian and the Regieleki, and the Zacian can move before the other Zacian if it wants with that Electro Web. Definitely a tough spot for Renny to be in here.
One thing that we did just see as commentators, that of course Renny is not aware of, is that there is no play rough on the Zacian on Hakim's side. So that is something that is like that is a little bit nice. But in comes the Shedinja right away, looking to be a little bit annoying here. We'll see if the Shedinja is able to eat a Big Max Lightning, but the Regieleki looks like it's about to go big or go home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's actually the Moltres. Oops, my bad. I am all lost in this turn 1 right now. I'm just going to let you take over for the rest of the turn, Hayden, while I catch my bearings.
Sure. One thing to catch your bearings on, Hakim is the top player and Renny is the bottom player. We've accidentally switched the names, so we'll try to catch that as commentators from now on. Looks like the Moltres, Dynamax, but it just got hit by a Screech, and if that's a Behemoth Blade into the Moltres, that's such a huge deal. That's just the Dynamax Pokemon gone right away from Hakim's side of the field. That's... wow. What a brilliant read to just leave the Zacian to do whatever it likes, knowing that it's under this pressure, and just completely take the KO on a Pokemon that had to Dynamax, otherwise the Regieleki could have just taken it out already.
Yeah, and Screech coming out from Regieleki. It's a move that, as competitors, we all know it exists, but it is so uncommon to actually see it utilized that you don't really expect to see it. So that's a really, really well played turn number 1 by Regieleki to just go for that and just immediately remove the Dynamax factor from the other side of the field, putting a massive advantage on this side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most terrifying things about Regieleki is just how much opportunity it has for different supportive moves. And like establishing Screech as a play you can go for in game 1 makes it so scary to try to plan for this lead, because you can go for the normal Regieleki Zacian attacks, or you can just KO anything with a Screech Behemoth Blade. I suppose one thing you can't KO would be that Shedinja, though.
Yeah, Shedinja is going to be safe. Unfortunately, though, Shedinja not able to dish out a ton of damage on its own, but it does get some interesting moves like Will-O-Wisp. In this case, Poltergeist is actually just going to miss. So everything going so colossally wrong on Hakim's side is very, very unfortunate at the start of this set.
Yeah, that's really tough to be under so much pressure from this Regieleki Zacian combination. To be worried about all of these Screech Behemoth Blades. And then to go for the Poltergeist and get the read so that you can try to start taking down this Regieleki that's so scary, and then not to get it. So we're going to see... oh, but the Zacian avoids the Screech.
Okay, so misses abound here. Screech, of course, an 85% accurate move. It is not the most accurate thing in the world. Zacian doing a ton of damage regardless, though. That is a lot of damage. And I think we're just going to see traded Behemoth Blades here. About 80% going off on both of them. But no, it is the Regieleki that's going to take that hit, surviving on that Focus Sash, confirming the item here for Renny. He's going to be able to get some valid information there as Shedinja comes into the Poltergeist. But it fails after the Focus Sash is consumed.
Wow, what what a turn. You have to assume that Screech will hit, and so you sort of want to like maybe be able to just go for something with Zacian, not thinking it'll matter too much. And then with that Focus Sash breaking, oh, that's so tough. Definitely a whole lot Hakim's going to have to sort of take into the next matchup about sort of how to try to handle this such a scary Regieleki.
Yeah, and of course, a little bit of a note for those players who, or for the viewers who maybe aren't as in the weeds with the game that we play. Poltergeist, the way that move works is that your Pokemon is attacked by the item that it's holding. So if you consume the item, in this case a Focus Sash, there's nothing to actually do the attack. So as you can see there, it said attacked by the Rusted Sword. It's going to dish out a pretty good amount of damage here. Poltergeist, quite a strong move in its own right, but still, everything going still a little bit wrong here for Renny.
I mean, I suppose you do have the advantage that this Regieleki is now at 1 hit point, and so you could probably finish it off with something like a Shadow Sneak or a Quick Attack if the Zacian has it, but definitely tough. We saw that Poltergeist is into 2-hit KO on the Zacian, and we know that Hakim's Zacian seems to be slower than Renny's. And so there's just so much momentum still on Renny's side of the field, and I have to wonder what Hakim might have in mind for how to adjust in the future, because this lead is just so terrifying.
Indeed, we are going to be seeing the Landorus coming on in here. I think you're right, reading a bit of a Shadow Sneak coming on out there. Just wanting to make sure that the Regieleki doesn't go down. And of course, also weakening both of the Pokemon on the other side of the field. Well, the Double Protect ends up failing. That's a pretty big deal, as Behemoth Blade is just going to be able to go on in, dishing out so much damage. Once again, KOing that Zacian with ease. And now it's down to a 4v2. Hakim really struggling with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see the Poltergeist go out. Probably not going to be a whole lot of damage unless it's a critical hit. And I think I just really love seeing So maybe one more Poltergeist will be able to take out the Zacian. That's something for Hakim, but with the Landorus on the field, potentially able to deal super effective attacks to the Shedinja, it's no longer safe thanks to its Wonder Guard. And Kyogre's coming in, but the Regieleki isn't gone yet, so that's a really tough spot for Hakim, just going down to so few Pokemon. I did really love seeing that double protect the last turn for this reason, that like this is such a tough spot. And I love that Hakim identified, like, okay, I've got this 1/3 win condition, or at least a condition that I can get more into the match, and I know that the Zacian's going to attack me. It can't attack the Shedinja, so I'll just try to go for that double protect.
And the other thing that is worth noting here is that while this would actually not necessarily be the worst position for Hakim if he hadn't burned his Dynamax already, in this case, Landorus is capable of just not really caring about the Kyogre as long as it has Dynamax and the Kyogre doesn't. So I really, really like what Renny has done here. Decides to sort of sacrifice the Zacian in order to dish out 50% to that Kyogre, and now the Landorus can probably just Dynamax, hit it with a Max Quake, and end the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to get all of that momentum while saving your Dynamax and making sure that Hakim got nothing out of Hakim's Dynamax is such a huge benefit for Renny, and I think you had to use Screech to do it, so now Hakim knows about that and can maybe adjust. But just we've seen so much cascading just off of this turn 1 of getting that KO on the Moltres and then having so much pressure with the lead.
Yeah, and we haven't seen Shadow Sneak come out of the Shedinja yet, but I assume it has it. At this point, as Hakim, you might just decide to not reveal as much information as possible, because the game is definitely looking unfavorable, to say the least, I would say, Hayden. We are going to be seeing Landorus Dynamax here, trying to drop some rocks onto that Kyogre. I do like that decision as well. It might not be enough to KO since it doesn't have Stab or Life Orb, but it does cover for the Ally Switch coming out of the Shedinja.
Yeah, absolutely. Cover for the Ally Switch, and also you get that confirmation, like, is this Shedinja Focus Sash, or is it Safety Goggles? Because you'll see at the end of the turn if it takes Sand Recoil. I think that's a really good way to say, I've already basically won this game, or at least I'm pretty confident. Let me try to get the information I need to win the next one.
And it is going to be that Ally Switch coming out of Hakim, so a good cover move here by Renny. Electro Web's going to come on in as well, which may well be enough to eliminate the Kyogre. It didn't look like it was particularly bulky when it took that hit from the Zacian. In this case, though, actually going to eat that very, very well. So maybe an Assault Vest Kyogre. I'm not entirely sure what this team is running. So interestingly, not that much damage dealt, but Focus Sash is confirmed on the Shedinja here as well, and that's going to mean that A, the Focus Sash is consumed, and B, Shedinja not going to have a great time trying to survive against the sand.
Yeah, so Shedinja, on its last turn here, it did do something. It saved this Kyogre enough to be able to go for that Ice Beam, but even the Ice Beam isn't going to be... It does get a cheeky freeze, but it's going to be a tall battle for this poor Kyogre to try to win against whatever's left in the back for Renny. Okay. We do get the KO on Regieleki. Go ahead.
The freeze is the first step, though, right? Like, the Regieleki itself is going to go down here to the sand as well. So, maybe? Probably not, but maybe? Like, okay, if it is Assault Vest, maybe it can live in Oblivion Wing or, like, a Dark Pulse. Probably not. Humor me for a second. And then if we get, like, an Origin Pulse double crit or something, there might still be an out here for Hakim, as unlikely as it seems.
Yeah, there's maybe still an out, and just as important, Hakim now gets a little bit more information.
Yes.
Because this Yveltal has to go for an attack to be able to secure the game, we get to confirm, Hakim will see in a moment that this Yveltal has a Life Orb, and is going to be able to account for that and know that it's not Assault Vest. There's nothing switched up from how this team is normally run. And we will see if this is a KO and see if this secures the battle. It does, but that's one more piece of information for Hakim's side of the field, and you really need every bit that you can get going into this game too.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's really difficult about facing off against this kind of a Zacian, Yveltal, Regieleki team, especially in Game 1. You go into that and you're not really sure, are we looking at a Life Orb Eleki? Are we looking at a Life Orb Yveltal? Is it going to be Assault Vest on the Yveltal? There's all these different moving parts that fundamentally change the way you have to approach the matchup. So having all of this information is going to be very, very beneficial for Hakim going forward, especially the Screech, and you know, there's a lot of things that that Hakim can do to sort of adjust the way he approaches this matchup.
I really like that Hakim chose not to forfeit at the end there, just because recognizing that you really do need the information on this team to try to be able to succeed. You did give away that ally switch. Like, now your opponent knows that that's there, but they probably already thought it was there to begin with. And you've also got this advantage now that because you've shown the ally switch, your opponent now has to worry about that every single turn for the rest of the set, and that like mental fatigue can really build up.
I have always thought that like the best way to use ally switch is to find an excuse to show it in game one, and then you don't like sometimes you can click it and like depending on who you're playing against, but a lot of the time I like to just click it game one at some point, show them that I have ally switch, and then never click it again because they have to respect it. They have like some players will overread into that and just always be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna let him get me with the ally switch, so I'm gonna attack into the Shedinja all the time. And it's like, okay, well, it's a Shedinja. It's kind of okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was such a crucial fact in the past match that Renny was able to make those calls and not have to attack into the Shedinja. And so it was good to just sort of remind Renny, like, you have to think about the ally switch. This whole game that you thought was secure, it could have gone a totally different way if I made the right reads. And now we're getting into game two and a huge adjustment from Hakim.
Yeah, this is a very, very different way to play this game out. We've got a Transistor Porygon 2 now, as well as the Intimidate leads on either side with the Landorus and the Incineroar. I wonder if this is going to be the P2 going for something like a Trick Room. I think it was revealed that Renny Zacian is faster, so even that matchup is made a little bit easier with a potential Trick Room. But this could also just be Porygon 2 coming in to apply some pressure, making sure that there's something on the field that doesn't just drop to one of the more powerful offensive leads here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another piece of this Porygon 2 could have done that we didn't see, unfortunately, or fortunately if you're on Renny's side. It could have traced that Intimidate and made sure this Landorus wound up at -1 attack even with its White Herb, I believe. And instead, just sort of copying the Transistor, maybe not so useful. But really interesting to see the Trick Room, sort of because you got to see all 4 of the Pokemon Renny brought. You know that there was no Amoonguss on Renny's side of the field last time, and so maybe that means you can try to play for a Trick Room game in game 2.
Yeah, that is a very good point to make as well, though. There isn't really a great way to deal with the Amoonguss if Renny did bring it, but like you said, there's not really a reason to assume that the Amoonguss is going to be coming here. And we do have the Landorus maxing right off the bat here. Of course, it is neutral attack after the White Herb mitigates that Intimidate. Fake Out going off into the Regieleki is going to break the Focus Sash, but that means that the Incineroar is just a little bit of a sitting duck here with no Shucka, but Quake goes into the Porygon 2 instead.
Yeah, probably really telling that Renny's maybe thinking, I'm not sure if I have the options I need to be able to take care of this Porygon 2, and just trying to get like the special defense boost, get a little bit of damage up, and potentially having clicked that Screech to try to do a whole lot more damage if the Fake Out went into the other slot. And we do see Trick Room go up.
We do indeed. And interesting to note as well that even if Screech had gone through, the Porygon 2 still would have been able to eat that hit. Extremely bulky Pokemon, of course, with the addition of that Eviolite. But overall, very, very solid start here for Hakim, taking almost no damage. If the Incineroar had gone down there to a Max Quake, maybe it's Goggles to deal with that Amoonguss or something like that. That becomes very, very difficult for Hakim to navigate from there. But as it stands, not really any permanent damage done, as the Porygon is just able to recover back to full.
Yeah, so Porygon back up to full. This Regieleki has its Focus Sash broken, and so we might see a KO on it this turn. Incineroar seems to be going just for that Flare Blitz into the Regieleki. Could also have tried to pivot out. Getting some good damage. Not the KO because of that Intimidate, but this Regieleki starting to get pretty low after being such a problem the last time. And then Shuka Berry on Incineroar, saving it from the Max Quake here.
Yeah, so that is actually going to be revealed here. Some new information, but still going to take quite a lot of damage. Of course, Landorus's base attack stat is very, very high at 145. So even with the addition of Shucka, that's still going to do quite a lot of damage, but not enough to remove the Incineroar.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see this Thunderbolt come out. Might be enough to finish off this Incineroar, and it is. So Incineroar's gone with a critical hit. Incineroar is gone. But that might be just what Hakim needs to bring in this Kyogre and start putting out a whole lot of pressure.
Yeah, even with a couple of Quake boosts, Kyogre with full HP in the rain is going to be very, very scary. The living legend, indeed, as it comes on out. We'll have to see. Now, it's not going to one-hit KO the Landorus with Water Spout or something like that, but with Max Quake, or with Max Geyser in the rain, it might.
Yeah, definitely going to be a close call to see sort of how well this Landorus can take the attack. We also know that this Landorus only has one final turn of Dynamax left. And after that, there's just 2 whole turns of Trick Room where Hakim can do whatever he would like. And so, even though the Kyogre has a lot of offensive pressure now, we could also see Hakim sort of delay for a turn and even just like go for a Max Guard. And then there will be no Landorus on the field to cause any problems for you afterwards. Or no Dynamax Land, at least.
True, very, very true indeed. Even still, though, Max Quake into a Max Kyogre is going to do a fair amount of damage, but it's not going to get it into, like, KO range or anything like that. So, really, the ball is in Hakim's court. He can decide how exactly he wants to play this out. Does he want to Max Geyser a potential switch-in on the side that's now a Yveltal? Does he want to go for that Max Guard? We'll have to wait and see. Now, one problem about waiting out with the Max Guard is that you do, of course, burn another turn of Trick Room, which is a little bit unfortunate. So, one more piece of the puzzle that Hakim is going to need to consider before deciding what this Kyogre does.
All the questions on what this Kyogre goes for. We also get to see what Porygon 2 decides to do, if it maybe tries to go for an attack to finish up Regieleki, or it actually goes for an Eerie Impulse, which is amazing to catch that Yveltal switch. Now, Yveltal doesn't have any damage other than the foul play.
Yeah, Max Hailstorm is going to be the call here going into the Landorus as well. That double super effective move is going to dish out about 50% to this Dynamaxed Landorus. That is really... It's an impressive amount of damage when you consider that it's +2 defense, but it's also probably maybe a little less than you would have expected from a doubly super effective move out of a Dynamaxed Kyogre.
Yeah, we saw that Landorus take hits really well the previous game as well. And with those special defense boosts, just totally being able to survive at 4 times super effective attack, and it took half damage. That is incredible.
Off of a 150 base special attack Pokemon attacking it as well. So many reasons to be impressed with how this Landorus is trained right now. Renny's done a good job training this bad boy up. But we do have, what is this, 2 more turns of Trick Room now? So slowly but surely, Renny is getting through the initial Trick Rooms. The thing now is that he's got to get through the Dynamax as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's still those 2 turns of Dynamax and Trick Room that Hakim has. But so far, Renny's done a really good job of building up those special defense boosts. This Landorus hasn't taken a whole lot of KOs, but it's stayed on the field for so long, and then once it's gone, there's still a Regieleki and a Zacian on in the back to handle sort of the rest of the game once Trick Room is gone.
Yeah, this might even come down to something like getting a secondary Trick Room up or something, as we'll see if the Porygon 2 is even alive long enough to do that. But the Porygon 2 is actually going to leave the field here, opting to bring in the Zacian. So that's an interesting idea. If the Landorus can be removed, that is going to guarantee that the Zacian does underspeed at least one thing on the field, right? Because it's slower than both the Regieleki and the opposing Zacian. However, Protect coming in from this Landorus. Not every Landorus carries it. Sometimes it is a Swords Dance. So is that going to catch the Max Geyser? Yes, it is. And that is going to prevent this this Zacian from really accomplishing much of anything next turn.
This Landorus just survived 2 turns against a Dynamax Kyogre. That's incredible. What a wonderful Protect call. And then this Oblivion Wing not doing a whole lot of damage because of that Eerie Impulse, but it's still something. And this Yveltal isn't taking any more damage. It's sort of negating the Life Orb recoil with that Oblivion Wing. So definitely Renny just doing a really good job to sort of recognize, I don't have the momentum for another couple of turns. I can wait. I have Protect. I'll just wait until Dynamax is gone and Trick Room is enough, and then I will execute my same game plan as last time.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting turn because, of course, the Zacian is undersped by both of the opposing Pokemon, so Renny does have the opportunity to go for a hit into the Zacian if he so desires, but the Kyogre is still the slowest thing on the field. So if Renny goes for an attack, whatever is attacking, if it takes a Kyogre hit, is probably going to go down. So an interesting call that needs to be made here. Regieleki looks to be coming in for the Landorus, though, resetting the Landorus back, losing all those boosts, sure, but it's already pretty low, and at this point, it's mainly going to be seeing utility as an Intimidator onto the opposing Zacian.
Yeah, absolutely. Just sort of recognizing that maybe you really need that Intimidate to handle the Zacian later, and just sacrificing the Regieleki. And so just like deciding that the other 3 Pokemon are the right pieces. And that's the last Dynamax attack from Kyogre, and it's only taken 1 KO and done like 75% to Landorus. But the substitute, such brilliantly timed substitute, right as Trick Room is going down, and you just got rid of the Regieleki, so there's only the Zacian that's faster, and that Landorus can't get the Intimidate it just planned for. What a wonderful play. Yeah,
that's a fantastic time to substitute. Really, it's pretty obvious in that position that your opponent's probably not going to attack you. Either go for the double protect or something like that. So Hakim saying, you know what? I'm going to bring my Zacian in on the last turn of Trick Room. If there's a Zacian or a Regieleki on the other side of the field, I can hit it with something. If not, I can just click the substitute. It's going to be fine. Brilliant play indeed there by Hakim. And now we'll see if this substitute's enough to carry its weight through the rest of this game. Still a bit of an uphill battle.
Yeah, so many offensive tools still from Renny. Like, you've weathered the storm of Trick Room. And you now have so much damage into everything. You don't get the KO in the Zacian, but you do have a lot of offensive pressure on this Kyogre. And with Porygon 2 in the back, you have to wonder how Hakim's going to be able to get that damage if you lose an important piece like Kyogre.
Well, we do see the Landorus coming in once again to protect the Yveltal, at least for now. Substitute on the opposing Zacian is always interesting because you do know that one of those offensive moves is missing, but not sure whether or not it's Sacred Sword or Play Rough at this point. Sacred Sword on the other side, though, leaving Kyogre with a sliver as Zacian removes the Landorus. So this Kyogre might be positioned to go for a single target Origin Pulse in the rain. Does that pick up? This is not a particularly bulky Zacian, at least that's what it looked like.
We're going to see, and it's not enough to get the KO, so the Zacian does still have so much pressure, but what a clutch survival from Kyogre. We were just talking about how important it was that damage come out from the team side of the field, and it totally did there. You just got a KO, and this Zacian is now well within range of an attack from the other Zacian, and Yveltal, not known for being the bulkiest of Pokemon, and we know it's that Life Orb variant, also going to struggle with taking damage from the Zacian. And there's still the Porygon 2 in the back for just like a little bit of damage and cleanup if you need it.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting, but it's also a nice time to maybe go for a quick attack if he wants to show that, but I don't think Renny has shown quick attack yet, so maybe you want to try to hold on to that little bit of information, because Hakim has so much information on your team at this point. Any little bit that you can keep to yourself is going to be potentially pivotal in a game number 3 if it goes that far, but Renny does have the opportunity to remove the Kyogre if he decides to go for it, as long as the Kyogre doesn't go for a Protect or something like that, but...
Absolutely, and we're going to see this Zacian just going for Protect, maybe just letting this Kyogre get knocked out. We're going to see, I believe Renny did click that quick attack, so just trying to make sure if somehow our Zacians were speed tying, I want to make sure I still get this damage off. I want to make sure you're worried about that in the future. Is going to get that KO, but this is now a free switch-in for this Porygon 2 to come back in and start trying to put up some more pressure. It can finish up that Zacian if it wants to. It can just sort of start to endure all of the hits from the other side. And as long as you can take down one of those two Pokemon, Hakim might be in a really strong position.
For sure. I will say, though, I feel like that turn's definitely really, really nice for Renny. Hakim going for the Protect there, to me, seems like he was trying to read a potential Protect on the opposing Zacian as well. Just in case. We did see Renny consider the move of foul playing and protecting to try to remove the substitute while protecting the own Zacian. But that way, at this point, it's you know, a bit of a 50-50, I think, because the Zacian is faster for Renny. Sacred Sword's going to come right on in, dishing out a lot to the Porygon 2. The question is whether or not the Yveltal is going to be able to pick this off. Well, I mean, that's one of many questions, but the Behemoth Blade coming in here, which one is this going to target? It is going into the Zacian, and Renny is going to lose the first restricted.
Yeah, so that's one restricted down. Just one Pokemon there to face everything down. This Porygon 2 did take a lot of damage for its efforts, though. So we'll have to see what this Yveltal can do, if there's anything it can do to sort of, like, flip the tide of this battle. But it's going for Oblivion Wing, and even with the -2 special attack, that is actually enough to get the KO. Or, I suppose it reset at some point. That's something. This Yveltal is now staring down the Zacian, but with the substitute still up, looking like most likely the Zacian's going to be able to finish off this battle, even without needing Play Rough. It can just Behemoth Blade twice, and that'll be the end of the game.
Yeah, there's not really much that the Yveltal can do in this 1v1. So an unfortunate ending for the Yveltal, but Hakim showing us exactly how well he is capable of adjusting in a game number 2. Game 1, honestly, Hakim got kind of dunked on, if we're going to be real about it. But a fantastic adjustment here in game number 2, as the Zacian picks up the Yveltal, picking up game number 2 and tying up the set 1-1.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the mark of a brilliant player, to be able to say, I know I just was steamrolled in the first game, but this is a best of 3 and not a best of 1, and I know that I can still win this. And to be able to go for those awesome adjustments, seeing that the Amoonguss didn't come in game 1, now there's sort of a mind game around, does the Amoonguss come? But there wasn't that game. And you set up the Trick Room, even though your opponent's reading you all over the place, getting those max Quake boosts, going for that Protect with Landorus, you're playing to just a wonderful win condition that I think was not nearly, like, I don't think it was obvious at all to Renny that, like, oh, I'm going to switch in the Zacian in Trick Room, and then while this Kyogre is putting on all this pressure, I'll get the substitute up. And then that absolutely flipped the match on its head, because without that substitute, that Zacian would have been under so much pressure the entire rest of the game. And instead, it couldn't be intimidated, and the restricteds couldn't take it out quickly.
Yeah, just a fantastic deciding move, really. Several moves before the end of the game, sure, but it was definitely the decisive moment of that game number 2.
Going into game number 3, I'm very curious to see if we'll see adjustments from Renny. Do you go ahead and bring that Amoonguss to handle the Trick Room? Or do you still need those other 4 pieces? Because if Porygon 2 doesn't come this game, then suddenly you're bringing Amoonguss against a whole lot of really fast Pokemon, and it might have a little bit of trouble doing well.
Something that is worth noting about the potential Amoonguss matchup is that we did confirm Shucca Berry on that Incineroar, so you know that there's no Goggles there. Looking at the rest of this team, there isn't really a natural place for Goggles to go except for onto the Moltres, and if you're Renny, you kind of think to yourself, do I really care about the Moltres? It didn't do anything in game number 1, it just kind of exploded. But if he decides he doesn't really care about the Moltres, then maybe the Amoonguss is the adjustment that he needs in this game number 3.
Absolutely. Potentially an Amoonguss in the back for Renny. Right now, we're just seeing the leads. We've got Intimidate trading from Incineroar and Landorus, but that White Herb, this Landorus is still at full attack, and there's so much pressure coming out from the Regieleki and the Landorus against a Kyogre and an Incineroar.
This is an interesting one for sure, because both the Kyogre and the Landorus have quite a lot of potential to Dynamax, and generally speaking, Regieleki is a really good Dynamax target as well. In this case, if you're Hakim, maybe you don't expect the Regieleki to max, because you did confirm that it was Sash and not Life Orb or even something like Magnet, but it looks like Renny is going to be Dynamaxing that most of the time supportive Regieleki.
I think it's such an interesting mind game on the first turn when you're facing down something with Fake Out. Like, if I can read into what you're Fake Outing and go for the Dynamax on that Pokemon, maybe that's a whole lot of momentum. And we're going to see Hakim sort of recognizing the pressure on Kyogre, just pivoting to Porygon 2 and switching that out. Maybe having expected a different lead matchup, sort of switching this in. And we're going to have to see what this Incineroar goes for, but we know this Regieleki is going to be able to get off a max Electric type move, and the Landorus isn't going to move, because we saw Renny click those moves, Protect and Dynamax.
Well, there is the big ol' Regieleki, and Hakim probably feeling pretty good about switching out the Kyogre right now. Knowing that it's not Life Orb, you're generally not going to expect it to go into an Incineroar because it just wouldn't KO the Incineroar. But, yeah, I mean, seeing the Porygon 2 coming back in once again, P2 looking to be a big part of Hakim's plan. And this also deals with the Amoonguss, right? Because if there were an Amoonguss in the back, well, you've just baited Renny into setting terrain.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've baited the Dynamax into not Landorus, and Landorus was such a problem last time. And you've got an Electric Train up. Parting Shot just goes into the Landorus, nothing from that Incineroar there. But you now have this challenge that was so much damage from the Max Lightning, and now Regieleki can do even more. You don't necessarily have a natural resistance to electric attacks unless you've brought that Shedinja instead of Zacian. And this Regieleki might be exactly the tool that Renny needs to be able to finish off this game. That was a lot of damage onto Porygon 2. It doesn't have a safe Trick Room anymore.
That being said, we do see Amoonguss did come in the back, so it's in some ways nice for Hakim that the Regieleki did go big, but at this point, it is a tough spot because with the terrain effectively acts like a Life Orb here for this non-Life Orb Regieleki, so there isn't really a safe switch in, and Porygon 2 generally does not carry Protect, so it's going to be interesting to see how Hakim approaches this turn.
Yeah, we're going to see Landorus switching out first, getting that Amoonguss in. It can't use Spore at all, but perhaps it can still redirect some attacks that would otherwise go onto that Regieleki. Regieleki taking this potential KO. It might be a roll onto the Porygon 2, and it looks like it does get that KO. So Porygon 2's out. There is no Trick Room. But Incineroar will get a Parting Shot off on the Regieleki. The one tool that Hakim clearly has to slow this Regieleki down. It only has one more turn of Dynamax. Sure, it's in terrain, but it doesn't have that boosting item, so maybe that brings the damage down to an acceptable level. But you have to wonder, what tools does Hakim have for handling this Regieleki?
It is going to be interesting. Now, the Dynamax is almost definitely going to be the Kyogre. It's just going to be about how Hakim positions it. Does he go for a big Kyogre sooner? Does he try to outlast a little bit more damage and hope that the Kyogre is going to be healthy enough to pull off a successful Dynamax later in the game? Zacian, of course, also able to dish out quite a lot of damage, and with the Parting Shot there onto the opposing Regieleki, the Zacian will be able to get an attack in without going down. It really shouldn't go down unless something like a crit happens, but it is a pivotal turn here, right? This is the turn that may well decide whether Hakim lives or dies in this game.
Absolutely. And I think I really like the idea of pivoting Amoonguss in, using it for a totally different role than it might have been intended to do originally, or just another role that it can do well. Sure, it can't Spore, but it can Rage Powder. And with a combination of Amoonguss redirecting attacks, and Regieleki still having its Focus Sash intact, there's just a lot of offensive only electric attack pressure that Renny has right now. And you can go for this last turn of Dynamax attack, and then once that's gone, you can just keep going for Thunderbolts. And there's not a whole lot of spread options other than that Kyogre from Hakim. And so definitely a tough adjustment because this Amoonguss is coming, and it doesn't need to go for Spore to win. It has Rage Powder.
Yeah, it's going to buy Renny at least one turn here. But with the Dynamax Regieleki still being on the field, you could even potentially go for Protect on the Amoonguss for the first turn just to try to take advantage of the increased HP of that Dynamax, especially with Incineroar coming in instead of Kyogre. You know, if the Zacian hits you, and even if it crits the Behemoth Blade, you still have the Focus Sash. So, you know, the Regieleki is going to survive unless it gets, like, fake out crit Behemoth Bladed here. So, I guess actually probably a normal Behemoth Blade would do it as well. But it's going to be, up to Hakim to try to remove this Mushroom, I think. That's going to be the most important thing before Dynamaxing the Kyogre.
Yeah, I think Hakim's been sort of carefully planning around all the other offensive options from Renny's side of the field and thinking of Regieleki as support. But Regieleki is such a scary Pokemon because it's both support and damage. And I love that Renny was able to just pivot on a dime and go for this Dynamax. And definitely up to Hakim to try to figure out, can I do damage to this Regieleki, or do I have to take care of the Amoonguss first? Like, what is my best option for having a chance in this game?
The upside here, I think one of the very nice things to have, of course, is access to that Parting Shot on Incineroar. Just comparative to the speed tiers of everything else in this game, it is very nice that Hakim has the option, especially with Amoonguss switching out, to pivot into the potential Dynamaxing Kyogre, essentially for free without taking a free KO. But here comes the Max Lightning into the Zacian, despite the Parting Shot, still dealing a pretty hefty amount of damage. Behemoth Blade, now intimidated, back to neutral, is still going to dish out a pretty healthy amount of damage to a Dynamax Regieleki, though. That is more than I thought, actually. That's a very, very good damage amount of damage there. As once again, another Parting Shot coming into the Regieleki, bringing it to -2, and making it so that Thunderbolt should probably not KO the Zacian here.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the reduced stage of attack, and you've got the fact that Thunderbolt is just a whole lot less damage than the Max Lightning. So a really good Parting Shot there. But also a really good pivot to get that Landorus in and make sure that this Regieleki isn't down to its Focus Sash now. It took the Behemoth Blade, and it still has about 45 of its hit points remaining.
For sure. But I would be surprised if it does survive something, but it's nice that it's not just going to die to a Fake Out if the Incineroar comes back in, at the very, very least. Now, at this point, Regieleki probably just wants to sit on the field and, just embrace the sweet embrace of death whenever it comes for it, because switching it out's not really going to accomplish very much at this point. So it's the option of, do I want to go for a bit of speed control here? Do I want to just maybe Screech the Kyogre in case it Dynamaxes? That could be a really neat option here. But instead, actually, it looks like the Regieleki will be retained, while the Landorus is going to have to figure out what it wants to do here. Running out of time, but it is just going to go for the Protect.
Yeah, so really interesting to see Renny sort of like on the back foot and pivoting here. I think that Hakim's done a really good job to sort of reduce this Regieleki's damage so much. And although we are going to see pivoting the Zacian out to try to avoid damage there.
Also resetting that Intimidate's very, very nice there for Hakim's side. As the Incineroar comes on in, the Landorus did already have its White Herb consumed, so it's going to have a permanent -1 as long as it stays onto the field. Protect here is going to keep it alive if the Kyogre had gone for something like a Dynamax, but Hakim playing very, very patiently here. I really, really like that. Maybe even trying to position for a switch out on the Kyogre to bring it back in to reset the Rain before Dynamaxing, because that is a concern with the Rain turns slowly running out.
Yeah, a whole lot of thinking that you have to do for the long-term version of the game here. You don't Dynamax the Kyogre, you just get this damage off. You sort of try to position this Incineroar in, and you're right, that switch is now an option. You've also gotten just a little bit of damage on this Amoonguss, which might be the difference between Max Hailstorm getting the KO or not. So that's really good for Hakim's side. But we now do have the fact that Renny will be able to bring in this Regieleki whenever, and successfully chose not to leave it in before so that it's not threatened by the Fake Out this turn, and maybe can come in later when it's able to just get off an attack for free, because it outspeeds everything, and because there's only certain turns where Hakim's able to go for that Fake Out.
This is actually a very scary turn for Renny. If Hakim just goes for a Fake Out onto the Landorus and a Water Spout, things could get very, very, very concerning. But the Incineroar, instead to switch out, wants to retain that Intimidate option, especially with the opposing Zacian still on the field. And we're about to see if the Kyogre is going to Dynamax or not. With the Amoonguss still in the field, I could definitely see it going for Water Spout, but the Amoonguss leaves the field for the opposing Zacian here. And this is going to be a very, very important moment. Even if we do see Earthquake come out from the Landorus or some such, it is -1. We are spread, but the Fly is going to come out instead, keeping it alive. No Dynamax once again, though, as Water Spout is going to dish out a lot of damage to the opposing Zacian.
Yeah, that might be it's almost enough to get a KO, and this Zacian's now down to a really low amount. Can easily be picked up by KO. We do know it's faster than the other two Pokemon on the field, but that Landorus going for that Fly, really well timed to make sure that this Landorus stays on the field, and you're able to sort of stall out those rain turns and stall out until you're able to get a little bit more momentum. Really interesting to see that, especially when there weren't a whole lot of other good attacking options from Renny that turn.
On the other hand, though, Hakim has positioned himself perfectly to switch out that Kyogre once again into the Intimidate. 2 physical attackers on the opposing side of the field here for Renny, and then Kyogre gets the opportunity to come back in, reset the rain, as we were talking about. I would not be surprised to see Hakim go for that here. Really just the patience potentially paying off in dividends here. As Fly is a great way to keep the Landorus alive, but I'm not really sure what the Landorus is really going to accomplish here. Already at +1, it's going to go, or at -1, it's going to go down to -2 if the Incineroar comes back in before Fly even has a chance to hit.
Yeah, a whole lot of trouble for Renny's side of the field to handle this turn. We do see Incineroar come back in for the Zacian, recognizing that there was that KO potential from the Zacian on the other side of the field, and getting more Intimidates off on this side of the field. We are going to see the Zacian just has to go for a Protect, and we'll see this Fly go down, but then this Kyogre can do whatever it likes after the Fly. And that could be a whole lot of damage coming up from Kyogre, even without rain. We're going to see this Water Spout going into the Landorus.
At this HP, Water Spout's still more effective than Origin Pulse, dishing out so much damage and just removing the Landorus from the field. Absolutely deleted there. And now Fake Out is an option here. And really the only damage left is the Zacian. So what do you really do here as Renny? Because Fake Out, Water Spout is a very, very realistic possibility here.
Yeah, I think that this is the moment where Hakim's careful planning have really started to click and get into play, that there's a ton of momentum right this instant. And there was before, but it's really obvious now that there's this Incineroar has the Fake Out pressure, so Regieleki couldn't have come in this turn. You had to send in the Amoonguss, and this Zacian has already burned Protect, so we know that a lot of damage can come up from Hakim's side of the field unless there's a double. There's so much that Hakim can do here, and it's really on Renny to try to find some way that you can survive this turn and be able to get some momentum for the rest of the game.
The damage, the amount of HP remaining on both the Zacian and the Regieleki also make it so that if this Kyogre is carrying a Max Lightning here, I think it's just pretty safe for Hakim to Fake Out the Amoonguss and Max Lightning the other slot. If the Zacian stays in, it's going to go down. If the Regieleki switches in, sure, it resists, but honestly, it probably also goes down, just given how little HP it has left, and that will completely neutralize the Amoonguss's opportunities to potentially Spore as one way for Renny to get back into this Game 3.
Yeah, so we're going to see Kyogre go for the Dynamax. It can take whatever KO it would like other than on that Amoonguss. Amoonguss just protecting. We'll have to see what Incineroar goes for. It looks like it's a Fake Out into the Zacian, actually. Making sure that the Zacian can't go for an attack. I wonder if that means we're going to see the Kyogre. Kyogre is just going directly into Zacian, making sure that Zacian can't get a different attack. And reading into that Protect, not having that be redirected by the Rage Powder is a really big deal.
It really is, and of course, we did see that the Amoonguss has Giga Drain, so on the one hand, it can actually do damage to the Kyogre. A lot of Amoongusses will carry something like Pollen Puff as its attacking move, since it can double as both a healing and an attacking move. But Giga Drain is what Hakim is going to be having to deal with. And now with Terrain being set again, there is always the possibility for something like a Thunderbolt crit on Terrain, dishing out insane amounts of damage. So the game isn't quite over yet, especially considering the lack of HP on the Zacian in the back. But Renny is really up against the wall here, needing anything and everything that he can get to help him out of this corner.
And we'll see Amoonguss go for the Rage Powder, trying to give Regieleki as many turns as it can to try to deal damage in this Electric Train. Gonna go for that Thunderbolt. It's a whole lot of damage into the Incineroar, but not a KO. And we're going to see this Max Hailstorm go into the Amoonguss, going to do a huge amount of damage. That's 2/3, and it only has a little bit of hit points left to take whatever this Incineroar chooses to dish out. And this Regieleki, sure, it outspeeds everything. Yes, it's in terrain, but it's going to have a tough time dealing damage all on its own, and the Flare Blitz going into the Amoonguss looks like that's going to bring Renny down to just one poor little 40 hit point Regieleki trying to take down 3 Pokemon.
Yeah, and the other big thing there is the reveal of Max Hailstorm is a pseudo reveal of Assault Vest Kyogre. We've seen 2 water moves on it with Water Spout and Origin Pulse. We've seen the electric type move. We saw, I pointed it out in game number 1, Regieleki did a suspiciously low amount of damage with Electro Web, and with 4 attacks and that damage roll, I think it's essentially confirmed that Kyogre does have the Assault Vest, and that means that there's just no way that this Regieleki is going to be able to take it out, even if it wasn't facing down 2 other Pokemon. So, Hakim, what an incredible turnaround. Like, the game number 1, like, that was such a one-sided game in favor of Renny. Just absolutely dominated Hakim. But Hakim came back, adjusted game number 2, and then game number 3, it looked almost like Renny was playing into Hakim's plans every turn in the early game. You know, like, he did lose the Porygon 2, which was a little bit unfortunate, but, you know, setting the terrain to force the Amoonguss not to do anything, like, it really felt like Hakim was playing like 4, 5, 6 moves ahead the whole time, and it was just an incredibly impressive set to watch.
It was intricate to a level
Yes.
that I haven't seen in games for quite some time. It was really cool to see, like, so much going on in terms of, like, yes, you can do damage to me and take out my Porygon 2, but it will cost you this Amoonguss. And then trying to figure out the ways that, like, I know that it looks like this Regieleki's a really good win condition, but I can go for parting shots. I can reduce its damage so that you really have to play a bit more defensively. There was just so much thought going into every single turn. It was hard to commentate all of it in the amount of time that we had. There was just and so amazing to see just, like, those solid defensive pieces. You can lose the Porygon 2, but you still have the Incineroar, and it did so much with those fake outs and being able to take damage and the Intimidates on everything that this Kyogre was able to time exactly right when it went for that Dynamax and get so much damage off right at the right moment for Hakim.
Yeah, just a really, really great set to start off the day today. We have 3 more sets, though, coming on up, so don't go anywhere. We're going to kick it to a bit of a short break, but when we come back, Sebastian Para versus Matt Tidd for Chile versus Canada, which should be an absolutely crazy set. Both of those players so strong, and I'm really excited to see what they bring. We've got some creative minds coming up in the next game, so I hope we see some creative teams to back that up.